My name is Colin Mill, and every week I go to the movies to study what's keeping the cinema experience alive and how I can apply that to my own films. This is Going to the Movies with Colin Mill. Hey y'all, sorry for the hold up. I should have been back already with my movie reviews back during Screen 7. Also, when I went to go see Elvis Epic. Also, when I went to see Crime 101. Shoot, actually, I could have started doing the reviews back during New Year's when I went to go see Stranger Things in theaters. And I literally shot the whole review and everything. Nope, this doesn't seem the right way out either. Oh, dang it. Hey! Happy New Year! New Year's ain't me. But I've been too caught up with the production of Cable After Dark, and because of it, I haven't had the time to finish any of those reviews. But today is literally my 20th anniversary on YouTube. Literally, the day I started YouTube 20 years ago. So I felt like I had to post something today. But more on Cable After Dark later. So this month, I did get to see 4 new movies and 4 different movies. Maybe not too different. 2 are almost the same. But I will say it was 4 different experiences at the movie this month. Wuthering Heights is a 2026 film adaptation directed by Emerald Fennell, starring Margaret Robbie and Jacob Elordi. The film is a reinterpretation intended by Fennell to recreate the feeling of a teenage girl reading the book for the first time. To make a long story short, it's about a woman named Catherine whose long-lost love, Heathcliff, has returned home, and she begins to have an affair with him behind her husband's back. Now, I am definitely leaving a bunch of stuff out, but the way that this film tells the story, the film leaves a bunch of stuff out as well. You know, I didn't read the whole novel, but I read enough of the novel to know that there was a lot of stuff that this film would just... The film really just focused on, with most adaptations of Wuthering Heights, just focus on one part of the story that is Wuthering Heights. There's so much more going into this story. You know, I remember leaving the theaters feeling like how I felt when I went to go see The Godfather in theaters, because I spent my whole life watching The Godfather as a trilogy at home and got used to watching like the 7-hour version of The Godfather, the novella, the complete novella, the complete novel edition for television cut. You know, I've done watch that 7-hour version for so long that I forgot that, you know, the movies aren't that long. So if, you know, when I saw it in theater, I was like, this is not the whole story. This feels incomplete. And that's kind of how I felt when I saw Wuthering Heights. I felt like it was incomplete. You know, this is not the whole story. But I will say it was a very beautiful looking movie. I mean, visually, it was just, I was eating everything up. I remember I was trying to look at some stuff out online, and I was just like, oh no, I have to see this in theaters. I almost didn't see it in theaters. And then I saw some clips, and I was just like, how would I deprive myself from not having that? I have to see that on the big screen. And I'm telling you, it was visually lavish. It was, you know, very sensual, but not as, you know, it's not no 50 Shades of Grey going on here, which I was okay with because I didn't need all that in the theater, to be honest with you. You know, it's a very toxic story, you know, and you know, I think they did a great job performing it. You know, Charlie XCX did the music, and I thought the music was great. I thought that, you know, the production design was great. I thought the performance of the actors were great. There were a lot of things I would have changed. Like, you know, Heathcliff, to me, should have been, you know, not white. But that's a whole different story in itself. We'll go into that to another time. But I do think that it was an interesting movie. And if you didn't see it in theaters, you messed up. Because this is one of those movies you had to see on the big screen. It was made to see on the big screen. You know, it wasn't a very diverse crowd in there. I can honestly tell you, I felt like I was at a Taylor Swift concert in that movie. You know, but it was fun. It was fun, you know. Now, what did I get out of that for Cable After Dark? You know I can't fake atmosphere, you know, on the production design on that. I realized I gotta really double down on my production design. You know, I'm asking people to sit in a room with my character. You know, I have to really make sure the room is entertaining enough. You know, the room has to feel like something, you know, the sound, the lighting, the texture, you know, the whole environment gotta be something. So for the second movie of that day, I went to go see Ready or Not 2, Here I Come. Now, Ready or Not, I love the first movie. I was a big fan of it. I went to see that one in theaters as well. And I just couldn't wait to see this one. I was like, I must see this opening weekend. Ready or Not 2 picks up immediately after the first film, with Grace escaping the blazing mansion only to be framed for murder. Now, hunted by 5 deadlier elite families, she must protect her sister Faith while surviving a new game that determines the control of the world. Now, I knew what I was expecting from this film. I was just afraid, it was either going to be one, like it could be more of the same that we already got, or two, it would go a different, complete direction. And I got exactly what I wanted. This film was everything I was expecting it to be, plus more. It didn't need to do, and it's so interesting with sequels where we're gonna follow certain plot beats. Like, okay, we're gonna do the same thing again for certain things. Like when she put her wedding gown back on, I'm like, okay, we're gonna be doing certain things again. I thought, for the whole movie, we're gonna keep you like, oh, it's this again, oh, it's that again, but it doesn't do that. I really will say it found a way to keep the story fresh and entertaining and interesting. And I loved everybody here. I love seeing Sarah Michelle Gellar back. It's interesting to see her as a villain, and I think she did a great job. The whole cast and crew did a great job. It's one of those films where you literally have to watch the first film and then go right into the second one. I feel like that's now a double feature. What should have been a double feature with this movie is actually They Will Kill You, which I saw just a few days ago with my sister from another mister. We went to go see it in the city only because Brendan Fraser's The Mummy Returns was playing in that theater. So we were like, all right, we're going to have to go to 42nd Street just to see The Mummy Returns. But while we were there, we're going to go see They Will Kill You first. They Will Kill You is an action horror film following a woman named Asia, a former convict who takes a housekeeping job at a luxurious NYC high-rise to rescue her sister from a murderous satanic cult of wealthy residents, leading to a brutal, violent fight for survival. Now, just like Ready or Not, I knew what I was expecting for this movie. This movie, they violated this movie now by not having it back-to-back with Ready or Not. These films should have been back-to-back, double feature, on some Barbenheimer stuff. You know what I mean? Like, this movie was great. It pulled in a diverse audience. Like, when it was a packed opening night, diverse audience, young, old, black, white, Spanish, Asian, everybody was in there. It was one of those films where I was happy to see it in Manhattan because it takes place in Manhattan. Same thing with Ready or Not, because Ready or Not has this one line about, New York, and the girl mentioned Murray Hill, and where I saw it wasn't that far from Murray Hill, so it got like a really big laugh, But it was one of those films where it felt good to see it in the area where it kind of takes place, I will say it's a weird combination of Die Hard, The Raid, Kill Bill, and it's like they had a baby with Ready or Not and Beetlejuice. It was one of those films you don't know where it's heading at first, and when the twist starts twisting and it starts turning, it don't stop twisting. It was one of those weird movies where it's just like, oh, here's the twist, here's another twist, and not like an M. Night Shyamalan where it's like, that's just weird. It's weird, but I don't want to spoil how weird it gets, but it's weird in a fun way, in an entertaining way, but it's not what you expect. There's no way you can guess the ending of the movie, especially with the final boss fight. No way you can guess it, but I will say it was a very entertaining movie, and we did have a good time. It was both films, Ready or Not 2 and They Will Kill You, is the crowd pleasers. Both of them have style. I will say that last one, They Will Kill You, kind of looked like they were in LA. I don't feel like they were really in New York in that movie, but they both have style. They both got energy. One thing's for sure, there was strong reactions early, and very early on, it was like, oh, this is not going to be your normal movie, and I think it was a good time, Now, what did those films teach me about Cable After Dark? I can't just have a concept, I can't just have a vibe. Each sequence has to change the situation, or the audience will get ahead of the movie. I also learned that the story can't feel like homework. Even if it's layered, even if it's experimental, the audience should feel like they're discovering something, not just decoding a mystery. And last but not least, we also went to go see this film called Project Hail Mary. Now, I'm a sucker for sci-fi. I love science fiction, especially science fiction that's like very on the nose on science and not much on the fiction. I love a good film like one of my favorite movies of all time that I saw in theaters. One of my favorite theater experience I've ever had was the movie Gravity. So I was hoping for a movie like that when I saw Project Hail Mary. Now, Project Hail Mary is about a science teacher named Ryland Grace who wakes up in a spaceship with no recollection of who he is or how he got there. And as his memory slowly returns, he soon discovers he must solve the riddle behind a mysterious substance that's causing the sun to die out. And as the mission unravels, he finds out he may not have to do it alone. Now, I can tell you, this movie was a definite crowd pleaser. You know, it was very easy to follow. Huge concept, but very clear on the emotion. You know, people locked in very early. You can tell that they weren't confused. You know, a lot of times when science fiction movies are out and there's a lot of mumbo jumbo with the, the terms and, people don't want to feel like they're back in science class when they go see a movie. And this movie didn't do that too much. You know, it was just enough. Like, if you took, well, at least, if you went to science class a few times, you're going to be able to understand this movie, even if you wasn't paying attention, But, this film respects the audience attention. It doesn't make you chase the story. It literally carries you. I could definitely say it made you forget that you was in a room with Ryan Gosling for almost 2 hours and 30 minutes. Like it's a lot of the movie is just Ryan Gosling, which is the reason why I wanted to see the movie, because a lot of Cable After Dark is just me in the room, and I was like, all right, if they can figure out how to make Ryan Gosling entertaining in a room by himself, in a feature film, maybe I could find something in there to learn from, which I learned that my story can't feel like homework at all. There's gotta be a lot of stuff going on besides you staring at devices all day. That's for sure. The room has to feel alive, it's not just a desk and a computer, the pacing has to move without cutting to locations. I mean, granted, they had other scenes with other people that Ryan Gosling was talking to, but my film doesn't have that, so I had to figure out ways to have the pacing to keep going while there's just one person in the room the whole time. The story has to be very clear even when it gets weird, not just confusing for the sake of being deep, and every new discovery has to change the situation, not just more clues. So maybe if I do all that, maybe Cable After Dark, maybe, a fun cinematic experience, And that's the reason why you guys haven't heard from me in a while, because I'm working on making Cable After Dark an experience, a multimedia experience. The VR experience is probably going to be the best version of that experience, because it combines the book, the music, the movie, the radio drama, the analog horror, et cetera, et cetera. But everybody's not going to probably get on the VR version. I know that, so I want to make sure whichever version you do pick up on, it feels like a complete experience. I remember seeing the Bronx Tale live, Chef at the Apollo, New Jack City live, and I remember seeing those productions and just remembering, I'm going to do something different with Cable After Dark. It's not going to be something you watch. It's going to be something you experience. And I'm going to spend the next few weeks documenting the process for you guys, so you guys could be a part of the journey, so you can see what's going on, because radio silence, I know, is not really working for y'all right now. Y'all want to know what's going on, what am I doing, So I promise there will be more uploads after this. Until next time, much love, God bless, 2 pieces of chicken grease. I will see you guys later. Yeah.